Hi, welcome to the video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy, and comment your thoughts and opinions on the stories. Let's get started. Am I the antagonist for telling my dad to shut up after he doubted me? For reference, in female, my friend Tom, male, and I frequently arm wrestle at school. I tend to win. Sometimes, I tell my parents how I won at an arm wrestle with Tom, and every time, they doubt me, saying that he let me win, and there's no way you could beat a boy. They even said be careful, you don't want to get hurt too badly. In the past, I've asked if he had let me win, but he denies it. Several months ago, I invited Tom over to my house, where, for the first time, he beat me with a right-handed arm wrestle. My dad gave me an I told you so look. I decided to do a left-handed rematch, where I won, and I called to my dad that I did. Immediately, he says he definitely let you win. You could never actually beat him. Be careful, Tom. Don't hurt her. I got mad and shouted at him to shut up, playing it off as a half joke. My brothers and sisters said I overreacted, and I'm not sure how to feel. So, am I the antagonist? Edit. For those of you saying I should get really buff and beat him, I'll need to wait a few years for that one. I'm not 18 yet. Haha. Now for the top comments. NTA, your dad isn't a shat. Parents often don't realize the tiny moments of resentment that build up for not believing or supporting their kids. It's not hard to do that. Your dad is a baby. Unrelated, but I haven't heard the term a shat used in a while, and I burst out laughing. NTA. Dad's a butt. NTA. Face it, your father, well, both your parents, are misogynists. Am I the antagonist for talking about my heritage? So, I, 23 female, am Native American. I do not look it. I have a white biological father, and my bio dad is not my sibling's father. My siblings, my mom, my grandparents, and the person I call my father are native, and they look it. My skin color is rather pale because of bio dad's genes, and for a long time I was really self-conscious about it, with many people not believing my heritage or telling me to prove that I'm native. Note, no native or other POC has asked me to prove myself or anything. It's only ever been white people. Lol. As I've grown and gotten more in touch with my roots, I claim my heritage, and I know that genetics being weird are not indicative of my true self. That blood quantum is an outdated and racist ideal, etc. And I speak openly about who I am, ignoring the haters. Recently, a man came into my work, who was quite obviously another native man, and told me that I have beautiful features and that I look like I have native blood. I almost cried. It isn't often that someone looks past my skin color and notices my features, and it really made me feel validated. We talked about cultural stuff for a little bit while I rung up his items, and when he left, I couldn't stop smiling. Then, I noticed my coworker looking super uncomfortable. I asked them what was wrong, and they said, well, it just makes me uncomfortable to hear about your supposed heritage. I asked them what they meant, and they said there's no reason to talk about that stuff at work, and it makes me uncomfortable to hear about because I don't have anything like that to talk about. So it's unfair. You get to pretend you're special, and it's annoying. You look white. Just accept it and stop trying to be special all the time. I got really mad at them and said that just because they weren't connected to their roots didn't mean I couldn't be proud of mine, and that maybe they should look into their ancestors and see if they could find something cool. They might be Irish or Eastern European or Scandinavian or something, and those cultures have rich historical backgrounds, which they could learn about, and then they could have something to talk about too. They got really mad at me and said that I should just stop talking about it, and they called me a jerk for acting like I'm better than them. I don't think I do act like I'm better. If they were able to connect with someone and talk about their heritage, I would be so happy for them. Am I really tar? Now for the top comments. NTA, how wonderful that a customer saw something familiar in you. You should hold on to that. There is nothing wrong with any of us talking about and connecting with our roots. Each and every one of us are the descendants of survivors, lovers, haters, and people from times and circumstances we cannot really imagine. Your coworker needs to lighten up. It isn't like you started the conversation or rammed it down their throat. Maybe they need to spend some time thinking about why that conversation made them uncomfortable. Thank you for your kind words. I hope you have an awesome day. NTA, I get it. I'm half white and half Mexican. I embrace my Hispanic side and love the culture, especially because my dad is full Mexican and passed away in 2013, which made me feel the need to embrace it more for my kids as he's not around. But I have been around people who downplay me being Hispanic at all because I don't look or sound like it. Keep being you op. Am I the antagonist for never wanting to speak to my son again? I, 51 male, met my wife, 51F, 30 years ago in college. At the time, she had a 14-month-old son, Lawrence, and his BO dad was not present. During the past 30 years I've been there for everything related to him. By the time he was 4, he began calling me dad. I melted and realized that I had a huge responsibility in taking care of him. My family immediately accepted and adored him because he was so lovable. When he turned 10, he and my wife decided that they wanted me to legally adopt him. I was overjoyed and honored. I could never make anything better than Lawrence, I'd always say. During that process, BO dad was incarcerated for 7 years. We didn't know, and to that point had never reached out for his son and definitely did not pay any support. Over the years I've always been there for son. Big moments and small. He was never my step or adopted son. He was just my son. He called me dad. We joined funds, paid for private schools, camps, sports lessons, college, personal loans in our names, cars, etc. Throughout his life, until he became really successful. He lived at home, rent-free to save money until 2018, when he was 28, when he moved in with a GF, not wife. 2020, he meets his wife who didn't have a male role model in her life as her mom has been married at least 4 times. Over the last few years, she's manipulated every family situation we've had and used them as wedge issues to separate him from my wife and I. She, her therapist and a spiritual advisor have convinced him that he 1, came from a broken home. 2, I'm not a real dad, and 3, my wife and I conspired to keep him from BO dad. None of these allegations are true. I used to encourage him to reach out to BO dad if he wanted, and he'd always respond, fuck him, you're my dad. Recently, my wife and I were on a huge family vacation. Son and his wife were invited, but never RSVP'd, and told everyone not at the vacation that they weren't invited, and son texts and says has been talking to BO dad and he has questions for us when we return from vacation. 30 minutes later, he calls anyway to ruin our 1 street vacation in 3 years, to present his dad's puff, and now begins calling me by my first name. My wife and I are upset by this, and know we shouldn't entertain the BS, but we do for 35 minutes when the wife, who's been secretly listening the entire time, jumps in and starts yelling in support of son. I tell son that for 30 years I've been there for him, and because BO dad tells you some lies and you're now done with me, he coldly responds yes. His wife starts yelling at my wife, accusing her of being a bad GF to BO dad, who she and son never met. I'm hurt and angry and never want to speak to my son again. I know that he'll eventually soften on this stance, but it's still raw and very painful as I feel I've wasted my life on an ingrate who's conned me out of my love, time and money. Am I the antagonist for feeling like this? Now for the top comments. NTA, it really sounds like your son is easily manipulated by his wife. By the time he realizes it, he will have been isolated from family because of her. And what is worst is that his wife has help, therapist and advisor, in corrupting his mind. It's okay to be hurt and angry because your son has betrayed you in treating you the way he has. NTA, it really sounds like your son is easily manipulated by his wife. By the time he realizes it, he will have been isolated from family because of her. And what is worst is that his wife has help, therapist and advisor, in corrupting his mind. Basically, the therapist is enabling the abusive relationship because of likely projection type lies the wife told the therapist about Opus. That's gross. NTA, I'd suggest that you not engage in arguments with him. Maybe meet with a therapist to find the best phrase to use when he wants to come at you with this. I agree with the previous comment that this anger from him is more about BO dad. But grief manifests in weird ways. His wife is certainly not helping. But if you engage, you become the enemy. Again, get with a therapist to come up with a phrase that expresses that you love him. You did your best, but you won't be open to abuse from him. Good luck. I think if you can model compassion and boundaries, he may come around. Am I the antagonist for not attending my son's wedding? So my son and Dill got engaged about 2 years ago, and a year ago I found out my husband has been cheating on me. I filed for divorce, and since then my son and my Dill started supporting his father more, and I found out the reason was that he's funding the wedding. I was a SAHM, but in the divorce I got about 80% of his everything, and my son was extremely against it and tried to get me to back down. When I refused, he called me a horrible mom and a wife, and the reason my father cheated was because nobody can live with me. After he said that my parents stopped supporting him, he blamed it on me. Divorce was finalized about 4 months ago, and one more thing was that for tax reason his parents, that's my in-laws, inherited all their properties to me. Now the value is in millions. Although it was disclosed in the divorce documents, my ex didn't check it, and I didn't knew its current value either. But now my son wants me to come to the wedding and help them as his father couldn't afford to anymore. I refused and told them to leave my property and never come back. Both of them yelled about how I am the worst mother and an asshole for abandoning my own son. I seriously hate them and the way they treated me at my lowest. But now my mother is saying being a mother is all about forgiveness and that I should be the bigger person. And she also told me if I don't go to the wedding she wouldn't either, and if she doesn't lots of other relatives won't, which is making me wonder if I'm the asshole. Now for the top comments. NTA. It's a family exploding fight. Spiced up because lots of money is involved. Come to my wedding. Mom, I need you there because otherwise I can't afford the wedding. Everyone's hurting, including you. Good on your mom for advising you to act differently, but offering to back you if you don't take her advice. She gets a gold star. She's always rational, that's why I felt like I should ask others. NTA. The way your son has treated you is despicable. However, if he were sincerely apologetic, learned from his mistakes, and invited you to attend without paying, would you be interested in trying to forgive your son and having a relationship with him? It's okay if not, but if there's a shadow of a doubt or a temptation there, see if he'll go to therapy with you. If he does, maybe you can mend your relationship. If not, you can be content in the knowledge that you did what you could as a mom, and unfortunately sometimes our kids just turn out to be assholes. He didn't apologize. He came with his fiance and told me his father couldn't afford to help him anymore because of me, so now it's on me to help him. And it'd be invited if I promise I won't make a scene. Am I the antagonist for putting stress on my pregnant wife? Me, 31 male, and my wife, 27F, are going to have our first kid, a baby girl, together in early June. We are both very excited about it. She doesn't have any other kids, but I do. I have an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old from my first marriage. My ex and I share custody and co-parent together really well. My ex and my wife get along well, which I thank my lucky stars for. My wife and I were talking about only having the boys here for the weekends in June. Until the baby is settled in. My wife wanted this. My ex has cancer and has just started chemo. The issue now occurred when my ex came to pick up the boys on Thursday and asked if the boys can stay with me over the summer during the week and she can take weekends. Currently we alternate weeks because she will have to start a more aggressive course of chemo, and 1, doesn't want the kids to have to see her like that, and 2, isn't sure how much she'll even be capable of taking care of them. I told her I want to help her, and taking the boys is the least we can do. My wife was there and said she doesn't love the idea, but my ex literally begged, and my wife rolled her eyes and said fine, but if they don't behave, we'll give them back. I told my ex not to worry and that we'll take great care of the boys. After they left, my wife called me in saying that my ex and I cornered her, that I'm making her so very stressed. And she doesn't need two savages in her home right before she gives birth and right after. And how I know she wants a home birth, which can still happen, because they boys can go to either their mom or either of their grandparents. AITA. Now for the top comments. NTA, their mom literally has cancer. And excuse me, but did she literally call your children savages? Sounds like as soon as her BO child is born she is going to turn into the wicked stepmother. This is a huge red flag. This language is showing how she truly feels about your children. NTA, your ex isn't dumping the kids on you to be a jerk. She is battling cancer, and by taking the boys you are helping them and their mother in her fight for life. Your wife needs to wake up. Even if it is in a selfish way, if your ex dies, you will have the boys 109% of the time. Thank you for your input. Before this, I thought my ex only needed a few rounds of chemo, still awful. But the doctors were very hopeful, and now her disease has progressed. We will absolutely need to talk about this further. Am I the antagonist for letting my daughter cry for 15 minutes instead of fetching her tablet? Context. 6 years ago my wife was laid off. She struggled to find a job in the following months and we couldn't afford raising the kids, 2 boys and 1 girl, with my salary. An old client offered me a well-paying job overseas, so I took it. Last month I came back, after I agreed with a company to work from home, and they made the legal arrangements for it. When I was overseas, I'd talk to them every day and visit once a year. Whenever I was with them, I could notice that my wife was spoiling our daughter. I'd talk to her about it, but she'd tell me she knows what she is doing, and that she's the one raising her every day, and there's no harm treating our little girl like a princess. Our daughter is now 9, and while she's still our little girl, and will always be till the day we die, she's not exclusively that, and will need to start relying on herself more. When I came back I found out that my wife has been doing her homework. My teenage boys told me that mom bought their sister 3 iPads that she smashed when having tantrums in the last year and bought her a new one 2 months ago. If our daughter asks for something she will not stop crying until we get it for her. She'd literally be sitting on the couch and start screaming water until someone brings it to her. If she forget her tablet upstairs she'll order her brothers to get it for her, and if they refuse she'll start crying. Yesterday she tried doing the same. I ordered my boys to stay still, and I told her to go fetch herself. She kept crying for 15 minutes. I was hugging her all the time and comforting her. When she stopped I told her that she still has to get it by herself, but I will follow her if she wants. She was still annoyed, but replied saying that she's a big girl and can fetch it by herself. When my wife came back from an errand I told her what happened. Instead of supporting me, she was angry at me for letting her cry and told me that I was an asshole who preferred to let his girl cry for 15 minutes instead of taking 30 seconds to help her. I didn't expect that reaction from her. I told her that she's ruining our daughter, and if we keep treating her like that we will raise a pathetic person who can't rely on themselves for the simplest thing. I told her that she needs to stop doing her homework and instead we should guide her to figure out the answers by herself. And we should also make her do the chores her brothers did when they were her age. She replied that I was welcome to keep being an asshole to our daughter, but she'll keep treating her nicely. She warned me not cry or feel guilty when my daughter grows up and want nothing to do with me. The last thing I want is for my daughter to despise me, but at the same time I want her to grow up to be a strong independent woman. We aren't going to be with her for the rest of her life, and even if we were it's important for every adult to be able to fend for themselves. Now for the top comments. NTA, you're absolutely right. Your wife is doing more harm than good. Your daughter will grow up and not be able to handle anything. Your sons must feel so unloved by their mother. I think you should suggest some counseling for your wife. It seems like there may be something deeper going on there. Good luck. Yes. One of the greatest life skips is learning to cope and having resilience. This poor child is not being taught basic life skills, so she's been given a handicap. This is like abuse. That mother is keeping her daughter needy. It's disgusting. Not the a-hole. NTA. 100%. At first I thought you might be tar, but as soon as you said that your wife does your daughter's homework for her, that opinion did a complete 180. I work in childcare and have education regarding child development. The behavior your daughter is displaying is appropriate for a toddler, not a 9-year-old. This level of delay in social emotional development isn't normal. Your wife is spoiling your daughter and teaching her that crying and throwing tantrums will get her anything she wants. NTA, your wife is setting her up for failure in life. You did the right thing. She won't be weighted on the rest of her life, and people usually don't want to be around people that act like she currently is. Wife needs a reality check.